The following is a presentation of the Eagles Sports Network.
Hello and welcome into episode 18 of our podcast, Mossy Creek Conversations. Hello everyone, I'm the voice of the Eagles, Adam Cavalier, and pleased to welcome into the program today an All-American, the VSAC Player of the Year, and a member of Carson-Newman's Elite Eight men's basketball team from the early 80s. Twine time, Steve Adams. Thanks so much for taking some time out of your day and joining us here on the podcast.
Well, I appreciate you having me.
You talk to anybody who's in the know on Carson-Newman basketball history and bring up pure shooters. Steve Adams is frequently mentioned at the top. How'd you develop it? Where'd you get it from? And talk to me about the birth of Twine Time.
Oh, goodness. Well, obviously, the nickname was from Coach Jones.
No shock there.
He had a nickname for, yeah, exactly. He had a nickname for everybody. The funny thing about it is, you know, when I talk to some former teammates, former friends at school, I don't think anybody knows my name anymore. That's how they call it. And it's even, you know, some of the things it's been, you know, back when we did the Hall of Fame and some of the, even people here at home, at school and stuff, they'll call me Twine or something. So I forget sometimes my name's Steve. But I was very fortunate to be at Carson-Newman at a time, or coincide with Coach Jones being there and a lot of really, really good players that were able to let me, for lack of a better word, be me. And, you know, when I was little, growing up, Kentucky basketball was like a religion. And, you know, the first thing my father did was he put a goal up on our driveway. You know, and you know, you speak now when you talk about the history, you know, I keep thinking I'm at school and I'm hearing about the guys before me. All of a sudden now I'm the history and it makes me feel old. Makes me feel real old, actually. So, you know, I would shoot, and of course, back in that time, we had 3 TV stations. We didn't have internet and video games, and we had to fend for ourselves, basically. So I shot basketball, and I remember Dad coming home in the afternoons, and you know, he would. I'm gonna say this is gonna sound bad. He would beat me to death. I mean, he would hit me on the arm, push me when I was shooting. We had a couple of bushes that he would push me into, or I'd have to shoot from behind them. And he also made me a goal that was smaller than a normal goal. The ball would barely fit through it. I had to shoot it perfect. And it was smaller and set closer to the backboard. So shooting on that, when I got in the gym, where there wasn't any wind blowing or somebody wasn't beating me to death and the goal was regular size, it felt easy. But to be quite honest with you, I was very fortunate to be the product of a great coach that let me play, that was good for my way I played, and I had some tremendous teammates.
Yeah,
you know, you don't do anything without teammates.
I want to focus on that upbringing for a moment. You know, Montgomery, West Virginia native here, so to me, Danville, Kentucky is a big city. But I think it's fair to state that, you know, for a rural Appalachian upbringing, that's not uncommon what you did. A basketball hoop out in my case, a holla, with obstacles to work on. And
not to mention the wind.
Yeah.
You had, depending on which way the wind was blowing, you had to shoot that way so it would blow it. But, you know, we lived in a neighborhood and all the kids were about the same age within a couple of years. And all during the summer, all year long, we would play, if there wasn't enough of us to play baseball, we'd play wiffle ball. We'd play 2-on-2 or 3-on-3 or 1-on-1. We'd play kickball. We were playing some type of team sport all the time. And, you know, we'd go around to other neighborhoods and challenge them. It was just either did that or you didn't have anything else to do, basically. You know?
What was the process like to meander your way to Mossy Creek? How'd you make it to Carson-Newman?
Yeah, it was interesting. I was at the time that I was in high school, when I was a junior, we had a kid on our team that was a senior that was a really fine player. And Carson-Newman was recruiting him. And they had asked him down for a visit. So my high school coach took him down, and I tagged along and got to play a little bit. And that player, Larry Bartleson, he ended up not going there. But I think at that time, Coach David was the coach at Carson-Newman, and they kept up with me, him and Coach Haviland. And they recruited me very, very, very heavily the rest of that year and during my senior year in high school. I had ended up signing, just fell in love with Northern Illinois University. I thought big school, Mid-American Conference. Our first game was against the University of Iowa. Our second game was against DePaul. They were ranked number 1 in the nation. I think this is what all that shooting in the backyard was about. But I was also your typical 17, 18-year-old kid that had no idea about patience, about how real life worked. And to be quite honest with you, I wasn't patient enough. I'd gotten injured and just said, hey, I'm going home. And I went home at Christmas of my sophomore year. And I thought, what am I going to do? I didn't have any idea. And to be quite honest with you, I was just going to go to the University of Kentucky and play baseball and call it a day. It was good. And when I was at home, I went to I was on crutches. I had a cast on my leg. And I went to my high school. They were having practice where I played high school at and just hung out. And Coach asked me, said, what are you doing? What are you going to do? Used a few other not very kind words for me being a dumb kid. And I said, I don't know. I said, I think maybe I'll just go play baseball at Kentucky or something. So he said, well, what about Carson-Newman? They were calling for you. And I said, well, I don't know, just being a kid. And little did I know that he had went in the coach's office and had called the coaches at Carson-Newman. And by the time I'd gotten home, Coach David or Coach Haviland, one of them, had called the house and had spoken to my mother. And they said, Coach Middleton had called talking about Steve. Do you know what's going on? And Mom said, well, I have no idea. I said, but he's left Northern Illinois and he may be looking for a place to go. And the next thing I know, we went down for a visit. And come January, I was there enrolling in classes. And to be honest with you, that was a lonely month because I knew no one. When I got there, the basketball team had left for a trip to California for a tournament at Westmont. I didn't get to go because I had to stay and register for classes because at that time you went down to the bottom of the cafeteria and all the professors were sitting there and you went around and talked to them and got the classes you could get. So I had to be there. So here I am. I'm there. I know no one. I'm in the dorm. They give me a roommate, a guy by the name of Mike King, was a transfer in football, played at Vanderbilt. And he was there he was a ministerial student. So we were on, at that time, very different ends of the spectrum, but became one of my best friends. And that time was very, very informative. It helped me grow and was very, very beneficial.
You get to Carson-Newman kind of at an interesting time, early through the 1960s and the early 70s. Dick Campbell, Gene Mahaffey have Carson-Newman at the forefront of NAIA basketball. And the year you get there, it's a 6-22 year. And 1981-82 hits, and it becomes a 29-win team, and you can see things progressing back to, I guess, the standard of those teams from the 60s and early 70s. Was there a moment? You bring up Westmont. That was a 17-point loss, by the way.
Yeah, I feel like every game that year because I traveled with the team that whole second semester, and it seemed like, I went from playing, funny, went from playing in the University of Iowa, playing DePaul to Rosemont Horizon. And the first game that I went with them at Carson-Newman was to Tusculum, and in their old gym. Mm-hmm. And I thought, oh, they were swinging out on the stage on the rope, and you had big heaters on the back behind the bench. I thought, what in the world have I got myself into? And it was a little bit of a culture shock at first too, but I also felt, being from the culture of Central Kentucky, Southeastern Kentucky, and coming to East Tennessee, I felt more at home as well.
Was there a moment, even between, I don't know, the latter stages of that 80-81 year and into the start of 81-82, that you kind of sensed that the tides were turning in Carson-Newman's favor?
Unfortunately, and I felt terrible because there were some guys on that team that stayed over and played. Kevin Feltner, Kendall Jamison, Greg Lowe, Gary Miner, Alvin Jenkins, that were playing their hearts out. It just wasn't working, and Coach David, just like that happens to most coaches, they were released, and I thought, oh no, I've just transferred here. The coach has just gotten fired. I don't know who the new coach is going to be. Will I fit in? What's going to happen? So there was some moments there of doubt. What's going to happen? And then when Coach Jones was named a coach, first thing he did is he brought us all in together, and he said, and basically he said, things are going to change. And he had individual meetings with us all, and during that whole spring, we played basketball every afternoon in the gym, because I remember Tony and I used to go fishing as soon as we got out of class. We'd go fishing, and then we'd come back and play ball 2 or 3 hours before dinner. And you could sense that, and during those things, Coach would tell you things, and he was always one. I never saw him angry. I never saw him fuss at anybody. And to be quite honest with you, we probably needed it. And how he held back on some of that, I have no idea. That's just his personality. And everything he said to you was, you were the greatest, and you could do this, and we're going to get to this point. And you believed it. You eventually believed it, and then you started seeing people play better. People were able to do things that they were really good at. And then he ended up bringing in some really good, talented people. So the combination of talented players, the confidence that Coach Jones and Coach Carter gave you, it was a good combination.
You bring up the talent, and you kind of alluded to it earlier. The guys that you play with, obviously you, 2,034 career points, an All-American. Zeke Gilbert, 1,000-point scorer, All-American. Baja Raymond Letson, 1,000-point scorer. Tony Oglesby, 1,000-point scorer. How do
we have enough balls?
That's a great question.
We scored 1 year. We scored 142 points in a game at Tusculum, or against Tusculum, with no shot clock and no 3-point shot. I don't know how. We didn't guard anybody. We let them score. We could score, I guess. But yeah, the talent was unbelievable. I mean, we had people like Steve Herzog, Steve Peck, Larry Jackson, that came in a little bit later. I mean, we just had some tremendous. First of all, they were tremendous people.
Yeah.
And to bring all those different, diverse individuals that were talented together, and for it to work, is a testament to Coach Jones and Coach Carter.
Was there a sense that, looking back on it, have you ever played the what-if game? What if you had the 3-point line? What if you had the shot clock? Or was it just that style at that time was so unique that there is no hindsight being 20/20?
Yeah, we didn't know any better. I hate to say it, we were at school. We were 18, 19-year-old kids. we're going to school. We're eating well. We got new tennis shoes. Coach is letting us play. It was fun. What else did we want? As you get older and you get closer to getting that degree, that's something that's more important to you. As we've gotten older and, different things that we've gotten back together on. The game last year where they honored Tony. A bunch of us went out to eat after that game. And we all have each other's phone numbers, and at holidays and different things. If there's a hurricane or a tornado that comes through central Kentucky, all the guys are texting each other, hey, y'all doing okay? Birthdays, a birth of a new child, grandchild now for us. Those are, it gets more special, and you think the people, when you're 18, 19, 20-year-olds, you're not thinking a lot about things like that. I was fortunate enough to be in a great situation. I was fortunate enough to be able to do some things. But I think back, and people like Lewis Nealon, a great friend that we've just reconnected here recently again, who at sometimes during practice I hated him because he was relentless. I mean, he beat me to death. It was like I was back a little kid again. He would never let me have a bad day. And thinking back on it, if it wasn't for him, I'm probably not able to do some of the things that I was able to do. So you're thankful, and you see as you get older, you can't do things alone or by yourself. It's your teammates, the people who are supporting you, your coaches, and being in the right situations. Sometimes it's a little luck, but we had some very talented individuals, and a lot of individuals made sacrifices so that our team could be successful as well.
Is it crazy to you that these almost not full-on happenstance decisions, but let's face it, a high school coach makes a call to a place where a high school teammate was being recruited, and 40 years later you have a group of lifelong friends that still keep in touch with?
Yeah, it's amazing how, number one, what a small world it is. Yeah. How events or things that happen shape you or set the course for your life as you go through it. It's absolutely amazing. And, I'm always been a firm believer, you try to keep a positive outlook, and things happen for a reason. One of the funniest things that ever happened when I was at Carson-Newman, a good friend, I just saw him this summer, George Sanders. His mom was head, I'm going to say this wrong, I'm sure. She was head of the home ec department. I guess it's now called FCCLA, which is more, but it's home ec to us. His sister Betsy and I had a genealogy class, and we had to go back just 5 generations, and we actually found that my great-great-great-grandfather was the second president of Carson-Newman University. His name's Jesse Baker. His picture is hanging in the library. We found his grave, and I guess I was meant to be there. You
look at your last 2 seasons, the Elite Eight run and Kansas City Lights. One, you're in coaching. Can you fathom playing Kansas City Lights in the last minute of the game, orchestrating that against an opponent a la Chris Jones?
No. And we couldn't believe it either. But, it was different. Coach Jones was, and I say this with all due respect, was kind of a rebel. We did. We took his personality, as teams do. You take your coach's personality. Coach Jones was, whether he was faking it or not, he was full of confidence. He was full of confidence in us and in what he could do and what he could do with us. And we bought into all that. It was nothing, I'd never been to a practice like he had. The first 30 minutes of practice, he had certain shooting things that we had to do on our own. And during that whole time, music was blaring. And, you look over there and Zeke and somebody's dancing while they're doing their shots. And, it was just, we were comfortable. So, no, I can't imagine myself doing that in today's world. But at that time, that was Coach Jones.
Yeah.
And he said he was going to do it. He said, he'd play that sometimes during practice. He said, he put it on our media guide. He said, this is our goal. This is where we're trying to go, and this is how we're going to get there, and I'm going to remind you of it every day. So that last 2 minutes, luckily that game was a blowout, so we were able to celebrate well into before the game was over, and then that music started, and we were just like, this is what we worked for, and it's coming true. We couldn't hardly believe it, but it was coming true.
That team, really all of your teams, were dominant in some way, shape, or form. But you roll through the NAIA District Tournament after losing to LMU in the VSAC tournament that year. How much did that loss refocus that year's team for what ended up being an Elite Eight run?
Well, it was unusual. At that time, the VSAC and the District 24 was the same teams.
Yeah.
The same group is East and West. And that first, the VSAC tournament, in the big scheme of things, didn't mean anything. It was the District 24 that we were. So going into it, we'd rolled through the regular season pretty easy. We were cocky. We're supposed to win. It's going to happen. LMU was always a very good team that was capable of beating you at any time. And they did. And it kind of woke us up. It said, hey, we better refocus here if we're going to get to where we want to be. And then we ended up rolling through that District 24 tournament that year fairly easily. And it helped that because we were a top seed. We got, and then I think Lipscomb University got upset. So we got to play all those games at home, which was definitely beneficial.
What was Holt Fieldhouse like in the 1980s?
Man. Oh, back in those – well, now during that was a little bit of an unusual time during that tournament because we were on spring break. And there was – well, for those games, it ended up being pretty much full because of all the people there in Jefferson City and surrounding areas that came. Coach Jones even went and got Jefferson County's cheerleaders that came over and cheered for the game because our whole student body was on spring break. And but during the course of the seasons, Holt Fieldhouse was packed. I mean, we always had boy-girl doubleheaders. If you didn't get there at least before halftime of the girls' game, it was going to be a hard time finding a seat. And I can remember one Saturday afternoon game, we were playing Kentucky State. And this was a rivalry that Coach Jones had remembered when he was an assistant there. And between the Mike Ogan teams and the Travis Grant teams at Kentucky State, and I was familiar with those, being from Kentucky, obviously. And these were rivalries that Coach was trying to bring back. I mean, it's a Saturday night, Saturday evening, and the place is packed. You're out there going through warm-ups. Band is playing. You can always tell, when the attention is somewhere else. So, we all got the feeling. We looked down at the end by our bench, and Coach Jones was clogging. I mean, the place is packed. We're in warm-ups, and Coach Jones is clogging. The place is going crazy. And that's just was the atmosphere. He was a Dale Brown, Al McGuire. Yeah. He was the last of those unique individuals that had personality and were true people.
How much of it is basketball coach? How much of it is showman and what he was able to accomplish as head coach here?
Well, first of all, he had to do both.
Yeah.
I mean, he went around to the dorms and talked about our basketball team before the season started because – unfortunately, the year before he got there, they won 6 games. I think a couple of years before that. I mean, it had been some down years. And then at the time, too, football was really heading towards their apex. Baseball had won a World Series not too far in the past. So basketball had kind of gotten forgotten. Well, I don't know if kind of is the right word. It had gotten forgotten. And Coach had to do that to get the people back interested. He thought he was going to be able to put a good enough product on the floor. If he could get them there, the rest would take care of itself. Now, don't take away from Coach's coaching at all.
Yeah.
He was a offensive genius. I mean, he gave us, when we came out of the locker room for the game, you were tingling. He was the best motivator that I've ever been around. And as I get older, it's just like any coaches. All coaches have strengths and weaknesses. But Coach Jones was also one of the first ones that taught me what his weaknesses was Coach Carter's strengths. So we had both of those in the combination of them. And Coach Carter was not far removed from being a player himself. So he understood. And Coach Jones was a showman, but he was also a very good basketball coach.
You get into the national tournament in 82-83, run past Northern State, 114 to 81. How prepared did you feel being on a national stage for the first time? Clearly the results showing for themselves.
Well, we were, Coach did a heck of a scheduling job because we had already probably played at Georgia, Tennessee Tech.
Yeah.
We always played a couple of played Western Kentucky one year. He always had Division I games in our schedule, so we were used to playing against good competition. And to be quite honest with you, the teams at LMU, at Tennessee Wesleyan, at King, they were as good as any. Especially Lipscomb, Belmont, Christian Brothers. They were as good as anybody that we were going to see anywhere. So we were confident. In that first game against Northern State, we had it was our first game there. There was a number of us that it was their first flight. We were in Kansas City, and before the game, Coach Jones, we're sitting there and we're waiting for him to tell us what we're going to do, and how we're going to win, and all this good stuff. And he pulls out this mason jar of dirty water. He takes the top off and goes around and sprinkles us. He said, "Boys, I brought this from Mossy Creek. We'll be ready." We were a team. We were kids. We didn't know any better. We weren't scared of anything. Now, in that game, I don't remember how it went the first half. I do know coming out the second half, we settled in when we scored 72 points in the second half. And that was probably more than anybody else scored that whole day in a game. We got that in the second half. So after that, we kind of fell into a routine. We went and practiced at, I think it was Rockhurst before we played St. Mary's of Texas the next game. And, so we were prepared. Coach prepared us. We'd went up to UT and practiced the week before we went so we wouldn't get the big arena syndrome, as he called it. So he did everything within his power to have us prepared for what we were going to encounter.
You do that year. It end up losing to West Virginia Wesleyan. I think might have gone on to win the national title that year.
They got beat in the finals to College of Charleston in overtime, I think it was. We felt bad. We felt we should have won the national championship. Yeah.
But then the next year, again, great regular season, roll through the district tournament, but fall in the opening round by 1 to Central Washington. The highs of the previous year, how low was the low your senior year?
Well, going 35-5, it's hard to say it's low.
Right.
We'd made it back to the national tournament. And to be quite honest with you, it was a game that we probably should have won. It was going. With that said, Central Washington was a very good team. They were very deserving. Could have beat. I think they even went to the semifinals or quarterfinals that year themselves. They were a very good team that could have beaten anybody. But we were supposed to win, and that's what we were used to. Mm-hmm. We were disappointed. We were very disappointed, but we also knew that we played. it wasn't that we played bad either. We played as well as we could play. We gave it our best shot. Other team played maybe a little bit better, or the ball bounced the right way, whatever may happen. But we were disappointed. And Tony and I at the time, we were the only seniors on the team. And it's hard to fathom at that time that your basketball career has probably come to an end.
How you move on? You're now a coach, coaching at Boyle County High School, or coached at Boyle County High School. How would you have coached yourself as a player?
I probably wouldn't have got to play. You tend to be a little bit opposite of what you are or what you do. I was more of a defensive coach, if we can imagine that. I was probably more of a disciplinarian than what Coach Jones was. So I probably wouldn't have got in the game.
It's crazy to me, and it feels like it always comes up in these, and it might just be who we naturally gravitate to, but the quality of educator that Carson-Newman has produced over the years. You go on to be a teacher. What is it about Carson-Newman that has produced that's the commonality that helps produce people that go on in their lives, yourself included, and make a difference in the world as educators and coaches?
I think it's the environment at Carson-Newman. One of the reasons that I probably wasn't successful at Northern Illinois was because I thought I'm going to a big place and that I'll know a lot of people. Well, I only knew 4 or 5 people because that was my safety net. Carson-Newman, you knew everybody. And everybody knew you, and they were at your games. You were in class with them. You couldn't miss class because everybody knew, and then you were in trouble. I think it was the support that we received not only from our peers in the student body, but the relationships that we had with our coaches, with our instructors, our professors. They were at our games. We saw them in town. We had them for class. They knew you. They talked to you. If you had issues, if you had problems, you had a personal relationship that was able to guide you in the right direction. And not only that way, but they were excellent role models. We saw how they lived and how they cared. We didn't all, by no stretch of the imagination, were we perfect all the time when we were in college. We were 18, 19. We knew it all, knew things were, we knew everything. So we made a lot of mistakes. And the way those mistakes were handled and corrected by the environment that we were in at Carson-Newman, everybody says, well, how did you survive at a religious institution? But, it was because they modeled it. It wasn't something, they showed you different areas. They showed you different ways of living. They showed you, it wasn't something that was, for lack of a better word, pushed down your throat. It was modeled. Mm-hmm. And we learned how to get along with our teammates, with our peers in the student body, with our professors. I think it was just the nurturing and the great leadership and instructors and professors that we had at Carson-Newman.
Did you realize as you were going through this at the time, did you realize that you were growing as a person based on the environment that you were being nurtured in, or is that something that you gained appreciation of later in life?
I think both. I think I was definitely a different person from a maturity and a leadership responsibility by the time I was a senior from when I came in that first semester by myself in January. I was more confident. I was more sure in what my responsibility was to my teammates and to my coaches. I was more confident in what I was supposed to do in the community and in school. I became one that hopefully was the one doing the modeling of the proper way to carry yourself, the way to act. Now, obviously, that has grown as you've gotten away in the years from there. And I don't want to say by any stretch of the imagination was I a perfect comic. I wasn't. I remember, and I can remember one game specifically. I mean, I was on a roll. I'd scored good, and then inevitably you'll have that game where you just are terrible. And I had that game against Milligan at home. Place is packed, and I don't know what happened. I'd gotten fouled, but then I missed a shot or something. I'm laying on the floor down there at the far end of our bench, and it's where the faculty always sat. And Dr. Bull, bless his heart, love him to death, has been a mentor and a good friend. And I was upset, I was frustrated, I was mad, and I probably mouthed a word that wasn't appropriate to be mouthed on the court, just like any young kid that is stupid would do. And I remember the next day, I ran into Dr. Bull in the cafeteria, and he pulled me over and said, Steve, he said, he enlightened me on everything that I had done good and everything that I had modeled. And that one bit of frustration, I could ruin it all. So he didn't fuss at me. He didn't tell me I was a terrible person. He told me what I did was not appropriate in that situation with all the people that was looking at me from the platform that I had. And that was more important to me and made me think more about that than somebody that would fuss at you or say, oh, that was just wrong. How can you do that? You're just, so those were the type of people that we had that were mentoring us and kind of taking us under their wings, even when they didn't have to.
Yeah. You look at your appreciation of moments like that. What's it mean to you then when you get the call, a year and a half, I suppose, 2 years ago, that you're headed into the Hall of Fame?
It was unbelievable. You think back when you first showed up on campus, things weren't going really well. It was a dreary winter. Coach ends up getting fired. New coach comes in. You have doubts whether you've made the right decision or you're going to be in the right place. You just think about all those things. And then you think about all the people that helped you. Not only, obviously, I was able to get a degree that helped me do that. Obviously, all of your teammates that helped you, along the way. You're just flooded with a lot of memories of people that are, in your mind, maybe even more deserving than you are. And the only reason why you're getting it was because of them. So it was really a very special moment.
There are so many, and probably multiple books that could be written about Dr. Chris Jones, who's also in the Hall of Fame. But you were inducted, same class as your assistant coach, Eddie Carter. I'm sure that was meaningful. I think at the time when we talked, it was meaningful. But
Absolutely.
What's your top Eddie Carter moment, who I think is one of the low-key, brilliant, funny people out there in this world who, as tall as he is, he manages to stay small, and there's...
As tall as he is, Vicky is that short. I'm sorry, Vicky, I had to get that in there. Coach Jones was always the one that allowed us to be ourselves, and sometimes that wasn't always pretty. Coach Carter was the one that always came back in kind of, hey, Steve, it's okay. It's okay to be mad, but this is where we're trying to do and what we're trying to do. So he was always maybe the calming influence. But I never will forget that first summer we were having basketball camp, and we were in charge of the dorms, and we were making sure all the kids were in bed, and we were all setting out. Well, I say we all, Coach Carter, myself, I think Tony was there. There was just a few of us that were sitting there. And Coach Carter was talking, it had been long. We'd ask him how long he'd been dating Vicky, and that, were they going to get married and something. And the next thing we know, we don't see Ed for a couple of days, or Coach Carter. Don't see him for a couple of days. Well, he's eloped. He ran off and got married, and he said nothing to us. And he was always doing stuff like that. And when their first apartment that they have, I remember when Tommy Wayne was born, and I mean, he was about 2 years old. They were setting him on the cabinet, and he fell off and broke his leg, and poor kid sitting there with a blue cast on his leg. But they were just like our family. I mean, if we needed anything, if we just needed to talk, or if we just needed a sandwich, Coach Carter and Vicky, and they were always there. And it was so special to not only obviously be inducted into the Hall of Fame, but to go in with the same class with Coach Carter was really, really special for me.
Thematically, again, a commonality through a lot of these that we've done feels like family. Not necessarily by blood, but mercy. The connections that you make are so close.
Right. And, we'll talk to each other occasionally. We probably don't as much as we should. Life kind of takes you in different directions, and you get busy with your family and stuff. But the times that we do get together, it's like you never miss a beat. It's like you're right back where you were. You almost have the same roles. Coach Jones, with his hair getting a little bit grayer, looks the same as I saw him the first day I ever saw him. Coach Carter, same way. First day, splendid splendor. First day I ever saw him, he's the same person. And I guess that's as much as anything, the consistency. And what you're going to get, and it's always going to be positive and helpful.
You look at your playing career, you look at your coaching career. What goes down as the top moment? Is it from your days as a player, or is it from your days as a coach?
That's tough. I think when you're coaching, you're a little bit older and you understand things a little bit better than when you were younger and were a player. There were a lot of great things and a lot of great memories, but I also feel like I was part of a clog or a group that made something happen, and I was just part of it. As a coach, you kind of got to put all those pieces together and be the person that forms that and does it. So probably at Boyle County and us winning the region and going to the semifinals of the state tournament, beating the number 4 and number 1 team in the state tournament is very, very special. I have been fortunate enough, both as a coach and a player, to have some just more good than bad has ever happened, and probably more than I really deserve to have had happen. So it's really hard to distinguish, other than as a coach, you're kind of putting everything together.
Sure.
Whereas a player, you're a part of that and just try to do what you're supposed to do.
Probably also fair to the Kentucky State High School basketball tournament, of all the state basketball tournaments in this country, is probably at least in the top 3, because of how many schools are competing.
Yeah, we got over 300 and something schools that play basketball. There's no classification, so it's everybody against everybody. It's played in Rupp Arena. The 3 games that we played there, we had right at 15,000 people at each game. So those were special because that was a goal from the time you were in high school or before high school, hoping that your team could make it to the state tournament. And some of those. At college, it's a little bit more defined, I guess, because not as many people seem to know about it, especially when you're at a small college, and that. but it was a goal that we had and that we worked for. But being a coach in Kentucky, everybody knows about the state tournament. Everybody runs into, we were. It's so funny again. What a small world it is. We take our kids on a cruise that summer after the state tournament, and we're getting off Nassau, Bahamas, getting off the boat to go in, and a guy hollers at me. Was a newspaper guy. Said, "Hey, Coach Adams," and my daughter lives in Chicago now. Says, "Hey," said, "everywhere we go, somebody knows you." And it wasn't later that summer. We had taken my wife's parents up to see them, and we were in the Hancock building. And we were up and my mother-in-law was in a wheelchair, so I was pushing her out. And a guy hollers, "Hey, Coach Adams." And it was a guy that refereed in the state tournament. So, it's just fun, You run into things like that. That happens all the time here. Now, and it's been so many years since I've been at Carson-Newman, but when I was coaching at Tennessee Wesleyan, of course, I was familiar with the same schools that we played at that time and all that. And then, the people that grew up there, when I go back, a lot of them will remember our teams. And of course, anywhere you go in East Tennessee, they're going to know Coach Jones.
Mm-hmm. Do your children, and maybe more now than in the past, but was there ever a point where they grasped what you were as a basketball player?
I don't know. We don't talk about it too much. I know when Wes was playing, and he ended up playing for Coach Poe at Tennessee Wesleyan after Tony had convinced me to go work for him. I know I tried to stay away when he was in high school. When I say stay away, I went to every game. I didn't go to practices. If he asked me to help, I did. I think he probably felt a little bit of pressure because, at that time, everybody was familiar with the teams at Carson-Newman, and I wasn't that far removed as I am now. So I felt it was probably a little bit of a pressure on him because of course, our daughter was, they don't know. They don't know. They don't care. They just love you because you're dad, and you go with it. They'll probably see this and think, "What is that dummy doing?" Shut up for a minute. So I, and sometimes, my wife and I were talking back the other night. We were talking about something. I don't remember what it was, and I said, when you walk into our home. There's nothing in it right now, especially downstairs. I do have a so-called man cave upstairs that has a few things in it, but there's nothing in here that would say that we played baseball or basketball or were cheerleaders or anything like that. It's not something that, it's almost sometimes get to a point where you see people and the only thing they want to talk to you about is about basketball or how you did this. And, and I tell my wife all the time, I'm a whole lot more, especially now, than just basketball. Now, basketball was very good for me, probably got me everything I've got and sent me places I never would have able to be able to go. But hopefully there's a little bit more to me than just knowing somebody's playing a 2-3 zone or they're playing man-to-man.
Well, I want to go down that road.
In the big scheme of things, nobody cares.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, let's go. I want to go down that path then, since you've cracked the door open. Forget the Player of the Year award, the All-American honors, the Elite Eight appearance, the Hall of Fame recognition. If you strip that all away and take basketball out of the picture, and let's take education out of the picture too, because that's such a large area where you can leave an impact on life, and I don't want this to be an easy answer. Where does that lie for Steve Adams?
Jail, bro. Reform school, somewhere not good. I don't know. That is a tough question, because that was such for a long time. I had my high school coach was also my uncle, and he could be very well. He always went the other way with me, so the people didn't think I got preferential treatment. He was the roughest on me. I mean, anything that went wrong, I had to run. But he told me, he says, one of the smartest things he ever told me, he said, Steve, you're probably going to be fortunate enough to be able to have basketball, pay for your education, be able to take you places and do things that, the other kids here in high school maybe aren't going to be able to do, because you're going to have that option. He said, but what I want you to remember, he said, don't ever let basketball use you. He said, you use it to make life better, to do more things and be involved in other things. So I've kind of taken that to heart, and I try to use basketball. Now, and I've heard Coach Jones, and Coach Jones was another one that talked about it a lot too. He said, when he was younger, he made a god out of basketball, and it almost destroyed him. It, caused problems. Mm-hmm. And he'd always tell us that. Don't make a god out of basketball. Said, use it to get to something better. And hopefully, I'm just like any other person in the world. I know straight, I'm a sinner, I'm a failure in a lot of things. But hopefully I have used basketball to be able to help someone else have a better life, or have responsibilities or options that they might not have had otherwise.
Through all of this, and the note that I want to leave on, what does Carson-Newman mean to you?
Oh, yeah, that is very, I've thought about that a lot, and that's really tough to put into words, because it means so much in so many different areas. Mm-hmm. It was a place that, it was the right place for me. It was a place that I needed. I was there with the right people at the right time. And it's given me everything that it's given me a whole lot more than what I've given it, to be quite honest. And I don't know where I would be in life without the opportunities and the friendships and the mentors that I had at Carson-Newman. It's really kind of scary to think what would have happened if I wouldn't have had Carson-Newman and the people that influenced me and took care of me and guided me in the right direction. So it probably means, and there's thousands and thousands of people that could say the same thing probably. You would probably be lost without what Carson-Newman gave to me.
Steve, pleasure as always. Thanks so much for taking some time out of your day for a chat.
My pleasure, and I appreciate it. And, if there's ever anything that I can do, please let me know. And hopefully now that I'm not coaching anymore, that I can get down to some more games. And, haven't been back to many homecomings, and I think I would enjoy doing that.
That is Carson-Newman Hall of Famer Steve Adams. I'm the voice of the Eagles, Adam Cavalier. This has been another Mossy Creek Conversation. Thanks for joining us.